So what do we need to do about this issue of global warming? My view is we need to cap carbon emissions in America, a national cap. That cap ought to come down every single year. We ought to reduce our carbon emissions by at least 80%. And I say at least because it may be necessary to be more aggressive than that. But based on today's science, 80%. We ought to make the polluters pay. Below the cap, what we ought to do is make any of these big corporations that are sending out greenhouse gases, make them buy a permit. That will produce at least $30 billion. That money should be invested in wind, solar, cellulose-based biofuels, clean, renewable sources of energy. And it is true that I do have another difference with some of my Democratic opponents. I am not in favor of and am against building more nuclear power plants. Senator Clinton and Senator Obama have a different position about that. They're entitled to their position, but you just need to know that you have choices on this issue. I'm also against liquefying coal. I don't think we should have another carbon-based fuel. I'm against building more coal-fired power plants because we don't have the ability to capture the carbon. We don't need to make a bad situation worse. Today, America is in a great competition with China to be the greatest polluter on the planet. We need to clean up our act, and we should not be making this situation worse than it is. And then we do need to sacrifice, all of us together. You know, we do need to be patriotic about something other than war. We need to say, if we want America to be what it's capable of being, we're going to have to take responsibility. Now, I know this is outside what presidential candidates are supposed to do. What we're supposed to do is come rolling through. I've been through this before. Promise you this and promise you that. Promise you this, and we're going to just vote for me, and I'm going to go to Washington and take care of all your problems. Malarkey. You don't believe that stuff. At least if you got any sense, you don't believe it. What we need to solve this country's problems is we do need leadership, and we need strength and principled leaders, strong and principled leadership, but we also need you. You're going to have to be involved. You're going to have to actually take some responsibility and sacrifice for your country. You know, I still remember that famous John Kennedy inauguration speech, "Ask not what your country can do for you." Well, we are at that place in American history, and particularly on this issue, because we cannot spend and innovate our way out of this problem. We are going to have to be willing to sacrifice. We have to conserve in our home, in our workplaces. We're going to have to be willing to drive more fuel-efficient vehicles. Now, I have a universal health care plan. I hope somebody will ask me about it, but in this speech, I'm not going to go through it. I'm going to wait until you ask me about it. I have a plan to end poverty in America and to address the extraordinary economic inequality that exists in this country, which is really troublesome to me. And I hope somebody will ask me about that, because what's happening is our middle class is struggling every day just to survive. And on top of that, we have 5 million more Americans who've gone into poverty. And I announced my presidential campaign for the 9th Ward of New Orleans. I did it for a reason, because I think it is a glaring example of so many of the problems that exist in America today. And speaking for myself, I won't claim to speak for you, but I don't believe we need a surge in Baghdad. We need a surge in New Orleans to help the people there whose lives